Okay, good evening, or rather, we're pushing good morning by this time. What I'm going to do is we are looking at the worksheet here, and the dilation worksheet, and there are three portions of it, 1 through 10, 11 through 20, and 21 through 30. Each one is going to be a little different. So what I'm doing here is 2 of each, okay? I think I've got it to where it's 1 enlargement and 1 reduction. So, for numbers 1 through 10, we're asked to find the rule. Now, when they're talking about rule, what they're talking about is the scale factor. I hope you remember the scale factor is simply how much bigger or smaller the image is than the pre-image. And to figure that out, we set up that ratio, image over pre-image. And that lets us know that if the image is bigger than the pre-image, that we are going to have a positive scale factor, which is an enlargement. If the image, which is what happens after the transformation, is smaller than the pre-image, then we are going to have what is called a reduction, and the scale factor will be less than 1. Enlargement, scale factor is bigger than 1. Reduction, scale factor is less than 1. So here we look at this and we see that Q prime, R prime, S prime, P prime is smaller than Q, R, S, P. So we know it's a reduction, which means we know that if we're doing this right, our rule or scale factor will be less than 1. Now how we set that up is we know that our scale factor is going to equal x prime over x, y prime over y. Now what I mean by x prime and y prime is if I take something like r is equal to 1/4. That's the coordinates of r. So that is going to be my x and my y. R prime is going to be 0.5, 2. Now, I don't feel like dividing 0.5 by 1, even though that should be pretty easy, because division by 1 is just an identity property. But I can look at 2 by 4. So my scale factor, again, I'm looking at y. See how the original, my pre-image, is y. And so when I say y and y prime, what I'm talking about is the y coordinate of my pre-image and the y coordinate of my image. So 2 is y prime, so that gives me 2/4, or 1/2. So my scale factor, or rule, is 1/2. Now technically I'm done at that time. If I'm feeling confident, I move on. But if not, I can go and I can check another point. So I can look at my x, make sure that that adds up. I know that x times scale factor equals x prime. So I get 1 times 1/2, that's my scale factor, equals x prime. My x prime is 1/2. So 1 times 1/2 equals 1/2. And you go, yep, that's right. So I'm good to move on. So for my enlargement, I'm going to look at number 10. Okay, so number 10, I'm going from QRP to Q prime, R prime, P prime. Now, as we can see, looking at number 10, it is larger than, the image is larger than the pre-image, which means that it is an enlargement, which means that my scale factor should be greater than 1. So I'm just going to look at P here. Because I look at R, and R, it looks like I've got halves in there. Q, I've got halves in there. P, I've got 2 whole numbers, and so it just makes life easier to divide by whole numbers rather than by fractions. So P is 0, -2, and P prime is 0, -5. So in order to determine the scale factor, what I'm going to do, I can't use my zeros. Because scale factor being x prime over x would give me 0/0, and as we all know, we cannot divide by 0. So we have -5 over -2. So my scale factor is going to be my y prime over y. The y value of my p prime is negative 5. The y value of my pre-image, or y, or p, is negative 2. Negative 5 over negative 2, the negatives cancel out, which makes sense because remember, we cannot have a negative scale factor. Not a thing. We get 5 halves, or 2.5. So that is my scale factor. And again, I can be done and move on, or I can double check my work. If I double check my work, I can use Q. Q is negative 1, 2. So if I multiply each one of those by 2.5, I should get Q prime. So Q prime equals negative 1 times 2.5, 2 times 2.5. Well, negative 1 times 2.5 is going to give me negative 2.5, and 2 times 2.5 is 5. So if we did this right, Q prime should be at negative 2.5, 5, and I look over on the graph, and that's exactly where it is, negative 2.5, 5. So check my work, it was done right, time to move on. Now I know a lot of you guys are having difficulty with this, and this is one of those things that right now I want to make sure you know how to do it. I ultimately want you to understand why we do it, but right now, as you're learning it, I'll settle for doing it correctly, and that is mimicking the steps that I do. So if this isn't making sense, like if you watch me do number 10, and that makes sense, you go back and try and do number 9, and you have no clue what's going on, come back, watch the video again, make sure you understand exactly what I'm doing step by step, and go back. If it still doesn't make sense, then come in and see me at lunch, before school, after school, and I'll try and explain it differently so that you understand exactly what it is that we're doing here. So let's look over now at number 14. Now 14, it says we have a dilation of 5 halves. In 1 through 10, what we did was we took the two figures, figured out what the scale factor was. And we did that by dividing image by pre-image. On numbers 11 through 20, what we're doing is we're given the scale factor and the pre-image, and we have to graph the image. So what we're going to do is on each of these points, we're going to label them. So we have 1, 2, 1, negative 1, and negative 1, negative 1. And then we are going to multiply each of those points by the scale factor to figure out where it ends up after the transformation. So u times the scale factor is going to give me u prime. Now notice that when I write that down, that is, I don't know what's going on, I just keep hitting the wrong button. That works because if I have scale factor equals u prime over u, I can multiply both sides by u, and those u's cancel out, which gives me u times scale factor equals u prime, and that's exactly where I'm at right there. Okay. So my u point is 1, 2. My scale factor is 5 halves, and that's going to equal u prime. Just did a little bit of substitution right there. So that's going to be 1 times 5 halves. 2 times 5 halves equals u prime. 1 times 5 halves is 5 halves, or 2.5. 2 times 5 halves, those 2's cancel out, so we get 5. So u prime is going to be at 5 halves, or 2.5, 5. So right there. Repeat that process for t and v. T times scale factor equals t prime. Here I have 1, negative 1. When I multiply both of those by 5 over 2, I get t prime as 5 halves, negative 5 halves. So I can plot that right there. And then finally I have v prime, or v. Now I know that v times my scale factor equals v prime. V is 1, negative 1, negative 1. When I multiply those by 5 over 2, I get negative 5 halves, negative 5 halves right there. And so that is what my image looks like. My pre-image is the one I was given. The pre-image underwent a transformation. In this case, it was a dilation. And so therefore, the image, that which occurs after the transformation, would be the red triangle. Next, we are going to do number 15. Now, number 15 is tough because we're doing quarters, okay? So we know that, again, S, now this is actually R that I start off with, and I go back and I change it later. I'm sorry about that. But we have 0, 4. We're multiplying it by 1/4. Why? Because that's what we're told is the dilation factor. So we go 0, 4 times 1/4 equals S prime again. That's actually R prime. So we go 0 times 1/4. 4 times 1/4 equals R prime again. And so we get 0, 1 equals R prime. Moving on to Q. We have Q is negative 1, 2. So we plug that in just like we did. And I'm kind of skipping a step here because after we've done this a while, you should be comfortable with getting to this point. So we have negative 1, 2. These are my Q values right there, my X and Y. We multiply that by the scale factor 1/4. And that is going to give us Q prime. That gives us negative 1/4. 2 times 1/4 is 1/2 equals Q prime. And finally, we have S. Now, this is actually S, not R like I had before. So that gives us negative 3 times 1/4, positive 3 times 1/4, which is just then going to give us negative 3/4 as the coordinates for S prime. Making a video, I need to restart it. Okay, so there's a little bit of a hiccup there, but we're back. If we didn't finish the previous one, that's it. I went and changed our dilation of 1/4. It is a reduction, and therefore, and we know that because the scale factor is less than 1, and as we can see, the image is smaller than the pre-image. So, moving on. If we look at a dilation of 0.25, so we're looking at 23. Now I'm going to do this two ways. From 21 to 30, all it says is find the coordinates. You don't actually have to graph it. So for the first one, I'm not going to graph it, just going to find the coordinates. Second one, I will actually graph it as well. So in order to find the coordinates of the dilation, we first need to find the pre-image coordinates. So there we have 0, 0, 1, 3, and 4, 2. Now each one of these we're going to multiply by 0.25, or 1/4, to get the image. So pre-image of 1, so we're going to do E first. So we have 1 times 0.25, 3 times 0.25, and equals E prime. And that's going to give us 0.25, 0.75 equals E prime. Okay, so for D then, we're going to go 4. That's our X. In order to get our X prime, we want to multiply by our scale factor. Here, our scale factor is 0.25. And then we have 2 times 0.25, and again, That's going to give us, remember that x times the scale factor equals x prime, and y times the scale factor equals y prime. So there we have 4 times 0.25 and 2 times 0.25 equals d prime, which 4 times 0.25 is 1, 2 times 0.25 is 1/2. So we get d prime at 1.5. X equals 1, y equals 0.5. Now, f, since if you remember I told you that when we're doing these dilations, it's always about the origin. Because f is at the origin, it's not actually going to change. So you could just go, well, we're doing a dilation about the origin. F is at the origin, therefore it's like reflecting a point that is on the line of reflection, or rotating a point which is on the center of rotation. It just stays put. But we can actually prove that by going 0, 0, and we want to go to f prime. If we went 0 times 0.25 and then 0 times 0.25, we're going to end up with 0, 0 anyway. And so those are our answers. E prime is 0.25, 0.75. D prime is 1.5. And f prime is 0, 0. Now again, I'm not going to graph those right now because you don't need to. But on this next one, I'm going to show you that you can graph it as well if that just helps you visualize it, makes it seem more complete, whatever it takes. So we're going to look at number 28 in a dilation of 2. Now because we're looking at a dilation of 2, we know it's an enlargement, which means that the image figure is going to be larger than the pre-image figure. So what we're going to do is we're going to label each of our points, -1, -1, 0, 2, and 2, -1. And we know that what we're going to do, our scale factor is 2, just like we did last time and the time before that. We're simply going to multiply each one of our points, both the x value and the y value, by the scale factor, and that's going to give us those prime values. So for t prime, we're going to go 0 times 2, 2 times 2, and that's going to give us t prime. So 0 times 2 is 0, 2 times 2 is 4, so that's t prime 0, 4 right there. So if I want to do then u prime, I'm going to take both of those -1s, multiply them by 2, and I get -1, 2, -1, 2. -1 times 2 is -2. -1 times, or that's actually a positive 1 times 2 is 2. So that's going to give us u prime at -2, 2. And then for 2, -1, again, what we want to do is we want to take that x value, multiply it by the scale factor, and that is going to then give us the prime, the x value of the transformed point. So here we're going to go 2 times 2. That's going to give us the x value of s prime. And -1 times 2, that's going to give us the y value of s prime. And so that gives us 4, -2. We plot that and we go there. Now keep in mind, all the questions is actually asking for are these 3 statements. What is t prime, what is u prime, and what is s prime? But again, if drawing that triangle just helps you visualize it, helps you understand it better, go for it. And that is that. I will see you guys later this morning. Have a wonderful day, everybody. And Cleo, my cat, says bye as well.